Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the meeting on the Richmond Highway BRT with a focus on right-of-way acquisition. My name is Robin Geiger, and I am with the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. We really appreciate you being here with us tonight. And before we begin, I'd like to review some guidelines so everyone can participate and get the most out of this session. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the BRT website, and we will also share on social media on our Facebook page. You're welcome to submit questions using the Q&A function at any time, and we will do our best to get to all questions while also ensuring that we get to all participants. Please do not use the chat function because we want to keep all the questions in one area, and make sure when you submit your questions, you submit them to all panelists. If we run out of time, our team will follow up directly with any unanswered questions directly to attendees. And if you're on the phone, if you could please hold your questions until the end, and we will have instructions on how to ask the questions at the conclusion of the presentation. So I would now like to introduce Eric Titleman, Chief of Capital Projects at FCDOT, to start the meeting. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. So welcome, everyone. I'd like to first introduce our two supervisors, Supervisor Stork and Supervisor Lusk. If either one of you would like to make any opening comments, please do so.
I don't think they've joined us yet, and I know there was a board meeting today, so
okay.
Thanks.
I'm going to give you all, actually, I'd like to also, is Tom on, or is he still at the board meeting? Tom, are you with us?
I think he's not on yet either.
Is he at the board meeting also?
Yes.
Okay, Tom is our director, so if he comes on, we'll introduce him a little bit later. I'm going to give you just a very brief overview of the project, and then I'm going to turn it over to Rick Foley. He is my right-of-way specialist, works in our capital projects division. I'm a division chief for capital projects, and so this project is currently under my division. We are managing it along with a pretty sizable project management team that we've hired, mostly consultants and sub-consultants, as well as an in-house team of staff that are working with us on the project. So we have on the agenda tonight, I'll give you some brief updates on the project, and then, like I said, I'll turn it over to Rick, and he will walk you through the right-of-way process, the right-of-way acquisition process, and we'll talk about upcoming meetings after that. So we are using WebEx tonight. I think Robin has already gone through the instructions for you. So if you can save your questions, we'll go through the presentation first, and then we will take time to answer your questions tonight. So next slide. Okay, so just some brief updates on the project. You can see from the map here that, and the area that we are focusing on for right-of-way acquisition is primarily in the northern section of Richmond Highway, which is from about Napa Road up to North Kings Highway. That's the section that we're going to be primarily focusing on tonight. The 3-mile section below that is under VDOT's jurisdiction. They are actually managing that project segment, and if you do have questions related to right-of-way acquisition in their segment, I believe they're not going to be joining us tonight, but they've offered to take your questions. We will forward those to them directly, and we will put you in touch with someone from VDOT's right-of-way team and project management team. Next slide. Well, let me talk just briefly about what the project is. We are building what's called a bus rapid transit system. And the buses, these are like express bus service that run in the median. They will have their own dedicated bus lanes. You can see from the little graphic there. We are at about 30% design. So we're both completing the environmental document. It's a NEPA document, which is per national policy, because we'll be using Federal Transit Administration funding for the project. And we will be building 9 stations, 7 inline stations, and then 2 terminal stations, one at the Huntington Metro South, and then one at Fort Belvoir. The total project length is about, I think, a little over 7 miles, and we've broken it into what we call Segment 1 and Segment 2. Segment 1 is the northern section of the project, and then Segment 2 is from Napa Road South down to Fort Belvoir. We do have plans available on our website, so if you want to look at those plans and zoom in on some of the details, those are available to you as well. So next slide. Okay, so I mentioned the environmental process, NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act, and we are nearing the finishing of the document and getting ready soon to submit a draft to Federal Transit Administration for we've actually submitted some sections for their initial review. We haven't submitted the entire document to them yet. We're hoping then to get comments back from FTA, and final submission of the environmental document would be late fall. So we're nearing that time period of 2020, and we're hoping to get approval from the Federal Transit Administration sometime, maybe early winter 2020 to 21. We've done extensive public outreach in the corridor. This is one of many meetings that we've been holding with citizens and businesses in the community, in the corridor. We have newsletters that we have published, and those are available online as well. We have a series of meetings that are going to be coming up. Again, we're holding all of these meetings right now virtually. And you can see through October, we have right-of-way meetings today, and then the 22nd, which is this Thursday. And then we have some station design meetings coming up in November, and then some branding meetings coming up in December. Next slide. So let me talk just for a moment about the schedule. We actually have had to revise the schedule. The schedule has slipped a little bit. Part of that is due to delays that VDOT was incurring on their segment, their project segment, and so we have now revised our schedule to incorporate those modifications to VDOT's project schedule. On the next slide, I actually have a graphic that shows you kind of where we are and where we're heading next. You want to go to the next slide? I think I'll speak from that. There we go. Okay. So you can see the light blue on top is the environmental process that we are completing. As I mentioned before, we are working on the project design phase of the 30% design. We're wrapping that up right now, and then of course once the environmental document is signed off by the Federal Transit Administration, we will continue with our project design phase, and that will continue all the way through near the end of 2023. You'll see there's an overlap in around 2021. We would hope to begin our right-of-way process, which is again what Ricky is going to be talking to you about tonight. And that process is extensive. There are a lot of properties in the corridor that we need to acquire, either partial strips or in some cases we need parcel acquisition for the project itself and or stormwater features. And then you can see the orange is the utility coordination and construction, 2022 through 2027, and then construction of the BRT system itself, continuing starting around 2025, and then continuing through the end of 29 into 2030. So that's our high-level schedule for now. Subject, it could change. We're hoping it doesn't, but that's what we have put together as an estimate for the project schedule at the moment. And there is some discussion that is still continuing about utility relocation. I know there's been a lot of questions about undergrounding of utilities. Those discussions are still ongoing, so we don't have a definite answer at the moment yet regarding that topic. So in case you were curious, it is being explored, but we don't have an answer yet. So that is pretty much all I think I have. I think this is the last slide. Is there one more? I can't remember. Go ahead and advance up. Okay. So project update summary, again, you can go to our county website, or you can also use some of these files on our YouTube channel. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ricky. I think this is my last slide to talk to you about the right-of-way process.
Eric, this is Robin. Excuse me for interrupting, but Tom Bashadny, our director, has just joined.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Do we have any of our supervisors on here?
I do not see supervisors.
Okay. All right, Tom, I was just finishing up the intro. If you'd like to just say a few words, then I'm going to turn it over to Ricky.
Thanks, Eric. I appreciate everybody participating this evening. I won't take any of your time. The board is still meeting, so none of the supervisors are available at the moment, but they will definitely have the option to listen to the audio afterwards. So thank you very much, and I'll let Ricky continue with the presentation.
Thanks, Tom and Eric, and thank you to all the members of the public who have joined us tonight for the right-of-way acquisition process. My goal this evening is to briefly explain the process and what it should look like for those affected property owners from your perspective. So FCDOT will need to acquire land or right-of-way by paying just compensation to affected private property owners. Private property rights are protected by both federal, state, and county statutes and procedures. We expect the right-of-way process to begin in late winter or early spring of 2021. So what this would look like, generally speaking, for some of the property owners that we're going to get into detail a little bit later is you may be receiving letters as early as February about the appraisal process, and there will be more to follow on that. But we're going to follow some of the legal requirements as outlined to the right here, the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisitions Policy Act of 1970 as amended by Congress, the VDOT Right-of-Way Manual of Instructions, FTA Circular 5010.1E, the award management requirements, the Code of Federal Regulations 49 CFR Part 24, and then, of course, all applicable laws and policies of Fairfax County, Virginia, and the Commonwealth. FCDOT is going to be following, again, as I mentioned earlier, all of the state and federal and county statutes and procedures. We've went through this project extensively to try to reduce or minimize impacts and can carefully consider the impacts to each individual parcel and the need for the acquisition of such properties. It should be noted that each property is unique and the impacts are going to fluctuate on a case-by-case basis. What you can find when we reach out to you with an offer package would be a letter that explains the offer. Then, of course, the appraisal or waiver evaluation. Also included would be a title report, a notification of relocation benefits if it's applicable, if you're somebody who we intend to acquire your whole property. And then, of course, the 90-day notice to vacate if applicable. So there's a couple different types of property impacts or right-of-way impacts that we anticipate on this project. One would be a total parcel acquisition, and that's where FCDOT will need to acquire all land or right-of-way within a parcel. Then a parcel acquisition is one where we'll just need to acquire part of the property. Then we have the uneconomic remnants, which are a portion of the property, but there's some leftover that may not be able to be developed after the acquisition. And then finally, easements. Fairfax County will also be looking to acquire easements, both temporary or permanent in nature. As you can see here, here's a chart that kind of shows a breakdown of the total number of acquisitions by type. So you see here we have total acquisitions of commercial properties, currently looking at 25 of those, 18 residential, 1 religious institution, and so on. And then uneconomic remnants, we have 18, residential 3, minimal acquisitions, which would be easement or right of way, are going to be 77 for commercial, 27 for residential, and 4 for religious institutions, and then 1 strip acquisition of a school. And then for easements only, we're looking at 27 commercial and 24 residential. This in totals 225 parcels that we need to acquire land rights from. 160 of these are partial acquisitions and 65 are total parcel acquisitions or uneconomic remnants. It should be noted that this is subject to change as we continue to refine our design. Here's just an exhibit that I want to go over briefly. So this way, when you're looking at the roll maps that are on the Richmond Highway Bus Rapid Transit webpage, you have a better understanding of what it is that you're looking at. As you can see, the purple line here in the answer key is the limits of disturbance. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be acquiring land rights within the limits of disturbance. That's really the study area for the NEPA evaluation, in which we have to look at all the impacts that may be applicable in that particular area. Then you can see the yellow line, which is the existing parcel boundaries of each particular parcel of land or each particular property. Then the proposed right-of-way line is going to be the red line. If you're looking at Popkins Lane here, for example, you can see, just encasing the outside of the orange, which is the sidewalks, is a red line, and that shows the new right-of-way line. And then the darker black line here is the proposed grading limits. So that in those areas, there may be need for temporary construction easements and things of that nature in order to facilitate the grading. So if we need to acquire your property in whole and that forces us to relocate you, this briefly explains the relocation benefits. Residential relocation assistance, for example, would cover moving cost expenses, replacement housing, and supplemental, and assistance relocating replacement housing. Again, for rental assistance, we would also assist you with the moving costs. And then you would get up to 42 months of rental assistance for any rent differential or higher rents between the market rents versus the rent that you're currently paying. And then business and farms along the corridor, farms, which I believe there are none. And then, of course, nonprofits. Their moving costs would be covered, replacement property supplemental, and reestablishment expenses. If you're looking for more details on this, you can find them in the property guide to owners and tenants, located at the link below, but it's the VDOT right-of-way property guide to owners and tenants. So the anticipated right-of-way phasing approach for this project is key, as this is such a large project. We plan to break this up into several different areas, but segment A here, which is the north end from Huntington Metro to Sherwood Hall Lane, all of that acquisition will be done by Fairfax County and its consultants. Segment C here, south of that, which is between Sherwood Hall and Jeff Todd, all of that property will be acquired by VDOT as part of their project, as part of the VDOT widening project. Fairfax County doesn't anticipate any additional right-of-way needs that will not be handled by VDOT. And then in segment B, there will be some land rights that will be necessary with Woodlawn and Fort Belvoir, which the county is working to acquire those land rights as well. If you have more questions on the VDOT project, you can follow the link here, which could direct you to appropriate staff to answer your questions if you are interested in information on the segment C as shown. This is a draft of the whole parcel acquisition schedule. Currently, we are conducting title reports and title research for a number of the parcels on the project. We'll continue working on that through the acquisition phase, which we anticipate starting in approximately February. At that time, a number of properties have been identified in a first group that we intend to acquire. At that time, those property owners would receive letters from the appraiser indicating that their property, that the county does intend to acquire their property. And then they would ask for a time to accompany the appraiser on an inspection of your property. If you have questions as to where your property may fall after looking at the maps, please reach out to me and we can discuss when you should expect that letter based on the schedule. But just a note, there will be a number of phases for the whole parcel acquisitions, which is the first undertaking. And we expect to acquire approximately 20 or send out approximately 20 letters to property owners at that February timeframe. And then looking at the next phase being approximately summer, maybe July. But after the appraisal comes in, the process for a particular property is approximately 2 months between appraisal and appraisal review. At that time, it would come to the county and we would then work up an offer package and establish relocation benefits. And then send you an offer that we anticipate those going out in approximately April or May for that first group of property owners. If you have any questions specifically related to your property, please email those to dotbrt@fairfaxcounty.gov and put in the subject heading line of right of way, and those questions will be directly routed to me. So this is a general outline of the acquisition process. To give you a little more detail, again, as I stated before, we are in the title phase, so we are currently identifying landowners, easements, encumbrances, and any claims that may be held against any particular property. As we start the appraisal process, that's about 6 to 8 weeks. The appraiser would send out a letter to inspect your property. They would then go out into the market and look at market data to prepare an appraisal. We would then have an independent review for accuracy of the appraisal, and then we would prepare the offer. That process, again, as I stated, is about 6 to 8 weeks. Then the negotiations are a minimum of 90 days. This is a statutory requirement. During the negotiation phase, we would provide a offer, the appraisal or waiver valuation, the title report, and negotiations. And then you see here, essentially, we would look to settle the property as needed, eventually demolishing the properties where we intend to acquire the whole parcel. Condemnation would only be used as a last resort if an impasse is reached with the property owner. And then ultimately a court would determine compensation. So as a general outline of the relocation process, property owners or tenants would be notified, a pre-acquisition report and interviews. And this is a detailed process in which we would interview property owners and tenants to establish particular benefits under the Uniform Relocation and Real Property Assistance Act. And this would help to determine eligibility of who's able to receive benefits and what those benefits would look like. This would occur during the appraisal phase of the acquisition process. The notice of the relocation benefits would be then provided to all applicable property owners and tenants, along with the 90-day notice to vacate at the time that the property owner would receive the offer of just compensation. Once the properties are vacated, the demolition process will proceed. Properties will be managed and maintained until completion of demolition. I did want to let everyone know that we've recently sent out letters of survey and environmental investigation. If you were the recipient of one of these letters, this is the head up that are coming out, and the letters were sent out via certified mail. If there's no response, a second letter would be sent out, which would be a notice of intent to inspect. The first letter asks for permission. And the second letter would notify you that we do intend to inspect your property. This is done for plat survey currently, as well as some environmental study that's being done, such as environmental borings. If you have received any of these letters, please respond again to the BRT email address with the property address or property access as the subject heading. So again, as I stated, those letters went out basically to help us to develop plats for survey information that's necessary, as well as environmental investigation. Moving forward, we anticipate meeting with property owners on an individual basis to address specific questions to the right-of-way acquisition process, more particularly related to the unique circumstances of the impacts that the project may cause to your property. If you would like more information, please visit the Richmond Highway Bus Rapid Transit website as seen in the link below. And if you would like to set up a meeting, please reach out by sending an email to the BRT email address with the subject heading of right-of-way, requesting a meeting for your property with the address. A reminder of some other upcoming meetings. We will be doing this meeting again on Thursday in Spanish for all of our Spanish-speaking residents. And we will have another BRT meeting in November for station design on November 4th at 7 p.m. in English, and November 5th at 7 p.m. in Spanish. And then in December, we'll have the BRT branding on December 8th at 7 p.m. And December 9th at 7 p.m. in Spanish. So if you'd like to ask some questions, now would be the time. I do want to go over some general guidelines. We would like to limit the discussion to just general questions about the right-of-way acquisition process. I don't want to get into specific details with property owners because of the confidential nature of the discussions with the property owners or tenants that may be impacted by the project. And again, if you want to set up a personalized meeting, please reach out to us at the email address shown here.
Okay, thank you, Ricky. We will now move into questions and answers. And in addition to the guidance that Ricky just gave everyone, I want to remind you to use the Q&A function to type your question for the moderators to read aloud. for me to read aloud. And then please do not use the chat feature to comment or ask questions. And for those of you who called in by phone, if you would like to ask a question, you will be allowed to speak. And the way you do that is you press *3 on your phone, and that will raise your hand. And then when it's your turn to ask a question, I'll call on you. And then after you've asked your question, if you would press *3 to unraise your hand, would appreciate that. So we will begin here. Okay, our first question is, I live at the village of Gum Springs, and has any consideration been given to the added noise pollution? The STC ratings of our current windows will not handle the added sound. How much noise is expected? Are trees enough before they are fully established?
I'll go ahead and try to answer the question for you. So yes, as part of the environmental document for the highway, we have conducted a noise analysis that looks at the future noise conditions of the roadway as it's being widened. So there may be areas where, for example, sound walls would be recommended as mitigation measures. And if your residential community is eligible, then there would be a process that we would go through to work with the community. There's actually a very defined process that the state has, and there's some very clear criteria for when sound walls are appropriate. So yes, the answer is yes. We have studied noise, and I don't know exactly where your house is located, so it's possible that you may be in an area that's already identified for future sound wall already.
Thank you, Eric. It seems we're getting some questions not exactly related to right-of-way acquisition, but more about the project. So we'll see as we go along how how we can answer these questions. The next question is, why is the BRT not continued to Telegraph Road? When they expanded Richmond Highway from Woodlawn to Telegraph Road, we were told they needed to have a 32 median for BRT, which is there now.
Well, the project that we are designing is based on the study that was done by the Department of Rail and Public Transportation, which shows the extension of bus rapid transit from the Huntington Metro Station South down phase 1 and 2 down to Fort Belvoir. Potentially phase 3 in the future could extend into Prince William County. So those are the limits that were studied initially, and that's what we are following.
Thank you, Eric. The next question is on BRT map 4. It appears there are no left turns into the Springbank neighborhood behind Chili's, other than one into the Delray Glass, and the only other way into the neighborhood will be into Delray Glass and from Beacon Hill Road. Is this correct?
I don't have a map in front of me, so I'm not sure exactly which neighborhood or approach into the neighborhood you're referring to, but where we have existing signalized intersections, those access points will remain into the neighborhoods, the communities. We're actually not removing any signalized intersections along the highway. But because we are building a bus lane down the middle, there will be raised medians on both sides. So you won't be able to drive across the busway to make a left turn. So that would mean you would have to make a right turn and go up to the next signalized intersection and then make a U-turn and then go back, and or vice versa. So that's how the project is designed, and of course all of those turning movements have been accounted for in sizing of the turn base and the traffic signals.
Thank you. And I did want to mention, as we go through our questions, we have many questions, and we're going to take one question per attendee, and then we will come back for a second round of questions. I just wanted to let you all know that. Our next question is, let's see, regarding the right-of-way acquisition process, is there an appeal process that homeowners can pursue other than litigation?
Hi, yes. Well, this is a two-part question. So as far as relocation benefits, there is an established right-of-way relocation benefits process in which you can appeal to the county on two levels, a more generic appeal and then a final appeal. And then, of course, part of this can be negotiated. And then if we're looking at the actual property values and the negotiation of that settlement, there will be a 90-day window for property owners to negotiate. And then if condemnation is initiated, we will continue to attempt to negotiate through the condemnation process up and into including the litigation process. So just because those processes may have been started does not mean that we will not continue to negotiate. We will additional evidence as provided by property owners or their representatives, including appraisals completed by the property owners, other market evidence such as sales comparables and things of that nature, broker's price opinions. So those are some of the evidence that we may look at. So there is multiple tools at your disposal to negotiate through the right-of-way acquisition process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ricky. Our next question is this just the northern portion or the entire project?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what the question is, but the right-of-way process that we were discussing tonight is the northern portion, because that's where the county is going to be actively purchasing property. The segment south, the 3 miles south, is under VDOT's management. So we would direct questions in that segment to VDOT.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our next question. I think I saw something called construction right-of-way or similar. Is that a temporary easement? You just mentioned, I think, but I didn't catch it. How does the temporary right-of-way work?
Yes, hi. There are at times needs for a temporary easement or what we would call a temporary construction easement. These can be for a specified length of time that would be defined on a case-by-case basis. Typically, they run anywhere from 1 to 3 years in which we would go out and look at market evidence, and it would basically be as if we were renting that portion of your property for that prescribed amount of time. We would pay you value for what land rights are typically rented for during that process or during that time frame. So, and once that temporary easement expires, the county's rights to access that portion of the property would go away, and full ownership control would revert back to you.
Okay, Ricky, thank you. The next question. Since the release of the Fairfax County's BRT plan in the summer of 2019, property values register a slight decline in value. Regarding the just compensation offer from Fairfax County, are those offers the current value of the property post or pre-plan release?
The properties will be valued on the date of valuation. So The effective date of the appraisal will be the day that the appraiser comes out to inspect your property. So it would be based off of when you receive that letter and when you have the appraiser inspect your property. So they would, at that point, it would be a snapshot in time in which they value your property on the date of the appraisal, based on current market evidence at the time of the appraisal.
Okay, we have another question. Someone says, just curious, how many of you or your family live in the area that will be potentially affected by this?
I don't know how many county staff live in the corridor. I mean, we have county staff that live all over, so I don't have an answer for you, sorry.
Okay, our next question. What is the status of the right-of-way requirements on Boswell Avenue, which affected homeowners protested in an FCDOT meeting and with a petition to Supervisor Stork with the staff promise it would get a new look?
Sorry, can you read that question again?
Sure. Okay. What is the status of the right-of-way requirements on Boswell Avenue, which affected homeowners, I guess, who had protested at a FCDOT meeting and had submitted a petition to Supervisor Stork with the staff promise it would get a new look? Boswell Avenue.
I'm not sure exactly what new look. There was a request from the community to not close Boswell. And so we are currently proposing to keep it open. There's an existing traffic signal there at Richmond Highway. And so the conditions are not changing with the project, but I'm not sure what the new look is. Sorry, I don't understand that question.
Okay. Who will be the lead person in Fairfax heading up this project?
Well, there's not one person. We have a governing structure that includes our supervisors and our chairman. We have department heads from various county departments, including Tom Bashadny, our department director, and Barbara Byron. She's with our planning department. We also have folks, senior directors from VDOT and the Department of Rail and Public Transportation that are involved in the governing structure. And then we have our technical folks, engineers and planners like myself, that are working with the project management team, consultant team, to actually produce the documents, the environmental documents and the engineer drawings. So it's a pretty extensive project, and so it's obviously affecting more than one county agency. My division is responsible at the moment for overseeing the environmental document preparation phase and the design, 30% design of the project.
Okay, thank you, Eric. The next question is, I think you said that 20 properties would get letters in approximately February. What portion of Richmond Highway will those come from? I think maybe which part of Richmond Highway will they go to?
Yes, hi. There's not a specific segment in which I could point to identify that. What I would say is that properties were selected based off of schedule risk. Generally speaking, the right-of-way relocation process for residential tenants takes an extensive amount of time. So with that in mind, we look to acquire majority of the residential properties that we plan to acquire in whole during that first phase. So that would be, if you're a residential property, it's likely, but if you would like to confirm that, I suggest you reach out to the dotbrt@fairfaxcounty.gov email address with the subject right-of-way line in the subject line, and then please include your address and we can answer that more specifically. But generally speaking, residential properties are included in that first phase.
Okay. Our next question is, can you talk about the feasibility of minimizing the cost of right-of-way acquisition by undergrounding utilities as a way to then use that money to pay for the higher cost of undergrounding?
Well, that's a complicated question, because if we actually have to move towards undergrounding the utilities, it's probably going to incur some delays to the project. And so we are in the process, we're working with VDOT right now to try to get some cost estimates to see how much money we can save potentially with some right-of-way savings if we were to go with undergrounding. But there's also a pretty substantial cost increase to the project from the undergrounding, and also the delays that we would incur would increase the construction costs as well. So it's possible that any savings that we might see from right-of-way savings could get used up by construction inflation. But I don't have any firm numbers because we're just right now working on those numbers. But there's not a lot of right-of-way that we can probably save in the corridor. And even if we there's some utility strips that we've reserved, 4-foot utility strips, and it's possible that we might actually need more than 4 feet for undergrounding, but we haven't designed it yet. We haven't been given direction to go ahead and design the underground utilities. But when you design underground utilities, you have large underground junction boxes and transformer vaults. Those can be pretty sizable, and it's possible that those would not fit within the existing right-of-way, and those would actually have to go in easements beyond the proposed right-of-way. But again, we haven't designed anything yet. We're also dealing with the complexity of where to put the other utilities: sewer, water, natural gas, telecommunication utilities, stormwater. There's a lot of infrastructure out in this area.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Our next question, how far on North Kings Highway does construction occur all the way to Telegraph Road? Why is VDOT handling the other portion, and have they had a virtual meeting about it?
Well, our construction limits will, we will terminate our construction limits at the Huntington Metro Station South along North Kings Highway. Why is VDOT handling a portion of the project? Well, we have two different objectives. VDOT's objective, their project, is to widen the highway, which is currently 4 lanes for that 3-mile segment, and widen it from 4 lanes to 6 lanes. Now they are, in addition to widening, they're also reserving a median for our future BRT system to run down the median. So VDOT's project is being managed by VDOT with oversight from the Federal Highway Administration, because it is effectively a road widening project. Our segment, we are not actually adding through lanes. We are widening the highway to add the bus lanes, but we're not adding general purpose lanes in the northern segment. Our project is a Federal Transit Administration project and is being being managed by Fairfax County and being overseen by the Federal Transit Administration. And VDOT has their own separate environmental document, although we are obviously coordinating very closely with them. But their environmental document will be approved by the Federal Highway Administration. Ours will be approved by the Federal Transit Administration.
Okay, thank you. A question about if this project is similar to the BRT project that was built in Richmond about 2 years ago.
Well, there are many similarities to the project in Richmond, the Pulse. We've actually visited that system multiple times. And many of the station features and the quality of the buses, the service, reliability of the service, all of those things are very similar. The one difference, I would say that a major difference between our project and the Richmond project is they primarily went within existing right-of-way. I don't recall them doing any extensive widening of any of their, they also run through their downtown for segments of the project, and so they don't have a lot of room to widen in their downtown area. So that project is primarily using existing right-of-way, and they're sharing some lanes in some areas as well. Our project has more exclusive and dedicated lanes for buses, so it's a little bit different of a system, maybe a little bit higher quality system, but those are probably some of the main differences. But there are a lot of similarities between the two projects.
Okay. Our next question, if everything goes well in the acquisition process, when would compensation and title transfer be completed?
I would anticipate that to happen typically, assuming that we are able to reach a settlement, I would anticipate that to happen within approximately 4 to 5 months after receiving an offer from the county, perhaps even sooner, but the main holdup typically would be the relocation process, as well as the actual negotiations, which sometimes can take some time. But the county's offer would be based off of the market value or the opinion of market value in the copy of the appraisal that would be provided to the property owners. And that would be the starting point for the negotiations.
Okay, thank you. Our next question. Hi, I'm a resident of Collard Street. What will be added along the highway, especially as you cut into our neighborhood, to absorb vehicle noises coming from the highway? Can you commit, please, to building a wall or planting trees and planting trees?
Well, I hate, as much as I love trees, the problem is that trees are not effective at reducing road noise. And plus they take up quite a bit of width in addition. So your neighborhood, because of the homes and the proximity of the homes, will be one of the areas that we will be studying for a potential noise wall along that side. And when we get a little further along, like I said, there's a very detailed prescribed process that we will follow, and there's even a voting system in place. The community will get to vote for whether or not they want a sound wall, and those that are most directly impacted will, of course, be able to vote. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be down the road a little ways further. We're not there yet, and we're not designing sound walls yet either. So that's probably a good year or more away before we get to any discussion about sound walls.
Okay, next question. With regard to the phases and right-of-way, are properties in the A section going to be the first ones which will be affected?
I believe that the answer is going to be yes. All of the properties that are in Section A are going to be acquired by the county. Now, the properties in Segment C are going to actually be acquired by VDOT, and they have a different schedule for right-of-way acquisition than the county, which I can't speak to. And if you would like to assistance with reaching out to them, if you're in that segment, we will be glad to assist if you send us an email. But the short answer is yes, we would be looking to acquire right-of-way in Segment A as early as February of next year. But it's a long right-of-way acquisition process. It's approximately 54 months in duration. So Some of those offers for partial acquisitions and easements may not be going out until 2022 or perhaps even 2023. So it depends really on the specific.
We might have lost Ricky. Ricky, can you hear us?
Yeah, we might have lost him.
Hopefully he will join us again, and we'll just keep going with the questions and answers. The next question is, are you, let's see, are you considering the speed limit reduction request for Route 1 in relation to lane widths and the potential for reducing right-of-way requirements? Is that something you can take, Eric?
Yes. Well, the answer is yes. We have asked VDOT to look at a study. They have to do a study to essentially justify a reduction in the speed limit, which they are willing to do. And they did one probably 10, 12 years ago. Some of you may remember there was a study done more than a decade ago. So yes, they are willing to look at that. I'm hoping that with a lower speed or design speed, that we will see some benefits, some things maybe that VDOT may require that I would like to not have to build as part of the project. Like, for example, I'd like to not build a 14-inch high crash barrier behind the stations along the edge of the travel lane. I don't think it's necessary, personally. I don't know how much VDOT will agree to reducing lane widths. We've talked to them about the possibility of reducing some of the lanes down to 10.5 feet. So far, they haven't been willing to do that, at least not on the through lanes. They did agree to reduce the turn lanes, however, down to 10.5 feet. So we've already approached them about that. So yeah, I'm optimistic that VDOT will be willing to complete the study, and that the study will be favorable to showing a lower design speed for Richmond Highway, and that will help us with many of our design features on the roadway.
Okay. The next question, what stage of the process are you in with the Federal Transit Administration?
We are in what's called the project development phase, and we are formally in that phase with the Federal Transit Administration. And during the project development phase, we have to complete many documents, including the environmental document, the NEPA document. So we're in good shape timing wise with FTA, and I expect that we will be able to complete. Project development phase can last up to 2 years. It's a maximum time period. I expect we will finish all of our submissions to Federal Transit Administration before 2 years. We're ahead of the schedule a little bit in that area, but that's where we are now. And then, of course, once we complete the project development phase, we would essentially request Federal Transit to consider our project to be put in the pipeline for FTA funding. And of course, we are competing on a national level against many other projects that are nationwide. But assuming we're successful in getting the FTA funds, then we would enter into what's called the full funding grant agreement phase with FTA, where they effectively give us an agreement to secure the funding that Federal Transit Administration share of the funding, we would have an agreement essentially to secure that, and that would allow us to continue moving forward with our design, utilities, design, right-of-way acquisition, and so on. All of those phases that follow are all subject to us entering into the full funding grant agreement phase. We may be able to initiate some land acquisition early using other funding sources that we have. So depending on the parcel, we generally don't advance acquisition too far in advance of the design, because again, we want to make sure the design is far enough along to justify the need for the acquisition. So there's a balance in there, but we do have some parcels that we know will be full acquisitions, and some of those parcels we may be moving ahead with what we call early acquisition on.
Thank you, Eric. Ricky had emailed and said that his internet went out, so hopefully he can get back on if that comes on. But thank you for continuing to answer the questions, Eric. The next one is, the diagram showed the realignment of Popkins Lane with Collard. Does this mean the St. Louis Church property will not be affected?
Well, we've had a number of meetings, with the church leadership, and many of the parishioners. We are going to work to minimize the impact on the church property. We'll probably have to be likely constructing a retaining wall along the east side of the roadway, but there will be some impact to the property, but we don't want to touch the I think it's Parish Hall is on the corner there. I know that that's a concern for the church members, and we definitely are going to avoid touching the building or having to move the building. We don't want to do that.
Okay, our next question is, could the noise be minimized by a slower speed limit? Perhaps the road design could narrow the lanes and the speed limit, limiting the need for sound walls, which limits the need for right-of-way costs, which could thus be put into undergrounding of wires.
Well, a lower speed limit will have benefits on reduced noise. That is true. But, at 35 miles an hour, probably people driving between, 35 and maybe even 40 miles an hour still on the highway, on the roadway, there is still going to be some level of noise that will have to be mitigated. So it's unlikely that we would not have to build any sound walls by lowering the speed limit to 35. I wish that were the case, but it's probably not likely to be the case. So, and again, if we have to mitigate the noise, that's a federal requirement, and so those are eligible expenses with the project. So, if we can reduce the amount of noise wall that we have to build, then yes, we can save money in project. I'm not sure how those monies can be reallocated, but to undergrounding per se, I'm not sure that those expenses are necessarily eligible for FTA funding, which is why the county is looking at other funding sources for possible undergrounding. But any savings to the project would be a benefit to the project, yes.
Okay. Our next question is, given the impact on travel due to this novel coronavirus now and in the future, has any part of this study looked into the cost-benefit analysis of actually moving forward with this project?
Well, we see the coronavirus as probably a short-term impact on our transportation system and network. We are not, we're looking at completing construction in 2030, so that's a decade from now. If we still have coronavirus, then we're in serious trouble. Hopefully this thing, either burns itself out or we have a vaccine or all of the above. You know, we know that there's been an impact on our transit systems, the metro and our bus systems in the region. It's hard to predict how long those impacts will last. A lot of it has to do, obviously, with how long people will continue teleworking as a way of, you know, socially isolating and socially distancing. But you know, there are some predictions already coming out that within possibly 1 to 2 years, we could see things resuming back to some level of normal. But again, those are just predictions. And of course, our completion date is well beyond 1 to 2 years. So I think it's pretty early to try to make any presumptions that, you know, for example, that we don't need this project in 10 years. I don't think anybody's willing to make that determination right now.
Okay. Our next question. In areas outside of those acquired by an easement, etc., and where property may be disturbed, will the county compensate for the property that is disrupted?
Well, any property that we, oh,
Eric, I'm
Ricky's back. Oh, great. Thank you.
sorry. I lost my internet connection for all those who were affected. But to answer that question, any property which we are going to be having direct impacts on, we would be acquiring some sort of land rights to offer compensation. There is, however, some instances where a property could be damaged because of the type of acquisition. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we would be using or acquiring any of the property within that area that's considered to be damaged, but it would be because of a direct result of our acquisition. So that would be considered when the appraiser comes out to appraise your property. And so in short, the answer is it depends, but it is a possibility. But we would be looking at that, and in cases where a property is damaged, we would be offering compensation.
Oh, thank you, Ricky. Glad to have you back. Next question. I read on the Embark website link that the Route 1 widening project and the BRT are separate projects. I assume the widening could take place, but BRT may not. But without widening Route 1, there won't be any BRT.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
That's okay. Okay, so this person read on the Embark website that the Route 1 widening project and the BRT are separate projects. He's assuming the widening could take place, but BRT may not. But without widening Route 1, there will not be a BRT.
Well, we're not assuming that the widening is going to take place without the BRT. In fact, the widening project is reserving median for BRT. So at this point, the plan is for VDOT to complete their widening portion, and then we will come in and build the BRT system.
Okay, thank you. When do you anticipate receiving full funding agreements from state, local, and federal partners?
Sorry, read that again. I've got emails coming in here as well from.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, so the question is, when do we anticipate receiving full funding agreements from state, local, and federal partners?
Well, I don't have a timeline for full funding agreement from any of the agencies. We have been applying for funds incrementally on the project and been receiving funds. Probably the key, the milestone for us is the Federal Transit Administration funding, full funding grant agreement. We are hopeful that once we complete the project development phase, that we will be able to enter into the pipeline for Federal Transit Administration funding. But again, those funds are competitive. And so our project is competing against projects throughout the country. And I can't make any predictions about, how our project will compete against other projects nationwide. So it's a little bit of an unknown, but that's part of how the process works. And of course, we've also been applying for for state funding. Some of those funds are also competitive, and we've been competing quite well for those state funds. Um, there is some federal money also that we've applied to the project already.
Okay. Ricky, I think this might be for you. Can you define the term uneconomic remnant?
Hi, yes. An uneconomic remnant is when the property residual or what is left after the acquisition of what's necessary for the property does not have what would be considered an economic value, in that it's potentially some scenarios in when that could happen is when the property is undevelopable, and perhaps the only usage for the property would be assemblage with another property because the portion of land is too small to use. Other instances could simply be that the existing use is no longer economically viable, such as we are intersecting a building with the right-of-way acquisition or the right-of-way line, and we have to demo the building. In that particular instance, there may be situations where it's negotiated between the county and the property owner whether or not the property still has value. So that may be up for discussions. Other times it's quite clear if there is, such a small area of property that it's no longer usable, or if perhaps the property would be landlocked because of the acquisition. So it depends again on the individual circumstances, but in general, it means that there's not going to be any economic value left after our acquisition. So in that case, we would then attempt to acquire the whole property as opposed to just the portion that we need.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, I think, is concerning when construction is in effect. What efforts are being made to minimize the crew entrance on various properties for the different studies? As these visits are disruptive to the existing residents, what options do residents have to minimize the disruption?
Well, that's hard to answer because we are still quite a few years away from construction. Generally, when we move into the construction phase, there's quite a bit of coordination with local property owners, commercial and residential property owners, maintaining access to properties and so on. Generally we hold what are called partner dusk meetings, and there are public information meetings that are held to share information about the construction progress, the staging of the construction, how things are going to unfold. But it's still far too early for us to get into those kinds of discussions. So I don't have any information at the moment.
Eric, I think that they might be referring to the environmental studies also that we talked about earlier in the meeting. So is there an answer for that?
When we would complete the environmental document?
Or I think when people do the borings and the environmental studies
Okay.
process.
Well, we have sent out letters, multiple letters already. I think we're done with the environmental investigation work. I don't think there's any additional investigation work that we are doing at the moment. If there is, we generally will notify property owners again. You go ahead.
I can jump in real quick. There are approximately 22 properties that we've identified for additional environmental borings, which those letters did go out, and we do plan to do a couple of borings. We are currently looking at the impacts associated. Our consultants are identifying where they'll need those borings, and we're discussing the necessity of those borings in particular instances versus the impacts to the property. So we are continuing to try to minimize the effects of that as we move forward into that portion of the study. And that said, the survey letters that went out describe a specific time frame, and property owners have been reaching out to the county to express, to be notified more specifically. Some have been asking for 48 hours notice and things of that nature as to when we would be entering the property for those inspections. And we will continue to work with property owners to that end to help to reduce the impacts to your private property.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Where can one find the results of the study/survey made of the impact on local residents by the loss of commercial establishments affected by the right-of-way?
Not sure.
Robin, could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Okay.
Could you repeat that?
Oh, sure. Okay, so where can one find the results of a study or survey that talks about the impacts on local residents about the loss of commercial establishments affected by the right-of-way acquisition?
I know that we are that several other county agencies are involved in looking at some of those impacts. We have our economic development offices looking into that, as well as the partners in Department of Planning and Zoning to try to help to sort of minimize some of those impacts and look for development opportunity to replace some of those services that may be lost because of the right-of-way impacts.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question. I live on Collard Street and I'm very concerned about the additional noise, as many of us will be closer to the highway. At what point of the BRT construction would any noise mitigation structures be added?
Well, the sound walls would be constructed as part of the construction of the project itself. We don't have a construction staging schedule yet, obviously, because we're not that far along. So I can't say exactly when the walls would be constructed. But typically, the first phase of the widening is utilities, and so the right-of-way acquisition would come essentially the first phase, and then a lot of the work will be utility relocation to those newly relocated properties. The walls probably would come, once the road has been actually widened and there's curb and sidewalk in place. Usually the wall panels are dropped in at that stage of the construction. If they're put in too early, the walls can get affected by grading and other activities going on. So typically the walls go in at that later phase of the construction. Sometimes they can accelerate that if there's a need. If they've widened, for example, and they put the sidewalks in, they can come in and begin putting the walls up, or maybe in some cases even build the walls and then backfill with the sidewalks afterwards. So, but those are the kind of questions that we would be bringing up with the contractor.
Okay, thank you, Eric. The next question is regarding if there are any plans with right-of-way for implementation of renewable energy sources.
So right-of-way implementation and renewable energy source.
I think he's asking his question is regarding, are there any plans with right-of-way for implementation of renewable energy sources?
Well, not sure. We are looking at the possibility of electric buses. We haven't fully costed those out yet, and there's quite a bit of infrastructure that we'd have to build, charging stations and things of that nature. So the answer is possibly. We may look at solar panels, for example, on stations, but again, we haven't really figured out those details as of yet. I don't know that there's room in the right-of-way to build any extensive solar panels. We are hoping to landscape much of these medians, and so if we're planting trees, those are not going to be good areas for solar panels. So.
Okay. A next question. On the maps along the proposed grading lines, there are multiple occurrences of the letters C and F. What do these letters signify?
I think those are construction limits of disturbance. If I don't have the map in front of me, are they? If they're a dashed line, we are showing on our maps potential areas of construction disturbance where we may need to be acquiring construction easements. Ricky talked about these earlier. Those would be, in many cases, those are often temporary easements. And once the construction is finished and everything is kind of regraded and reseeded, those go away.
Okay. All right, the next question is, why would we reduce speed on Route 1 when bus lanes would be moved to the median? Right now, there are folks that do not drive the speed limit. Won't this slow traffic down even further and cause bottlenecks? Richmond Highway is just that, a highway. If you slow down traffic on Route 1, this will push faster moving traffic to the GW Parkway.
Well, that depends. I mean, during the peak hour, the traffic moves along the highway rather slowly already. So it's really during your off-peak conditions that you probably see, higher speeds. And the reason that we are asking for consideration for the speed to be lowered is because we are trying to help create a residential walkable community in the corridor. And, we're building not only bus infrastructure, we're building sidewalk infrastructure, bike lane infrastructure, and so on. And, we want people to feel safe, and we want them to feel safe when they're crossing the streets. And so there's a direct correlation between pedestrian safety and vehicle speed. The higher the speed, the higher the occurrence of serious injury and fatality. And Richmond Highway has had, sadly, a lot of pedestrian fatalities over the last several years, and we see that speed is a direct factor in most of those fatalities. So we are concerned about pedestrian safety, and we believe that reducing the speed will improve and enhance pedestrian safety.
Okay, thank you, Eric. The next question is, how does the county's desire for quality and density of development along Richmond Highway get balanced with the above ground stormwater retention areas that look like they are replacing existing structures and are impacted by the right-of-way acquisition?
Well, if I think I understand the question, is how do you balance the needs for redevelopment with the need for stormwater? And we're trying to do both, actually. The Board of Supervisors has asked us, the county, to meet the county's stormwater standards, which are very high quality standards for the Richmond Highway corridor. And we've had a lot of comments during public meetings from folks that there is a concern about stormwater quality in the corridor, largely because much of the early development did not make provision for stormwater management facilities. So there's high runoff. There's a lot of trash that runs off as well. So those were the kind of concerns that we were getting. And again, the board has asked us to meet high quality stormwater management standards. But of course, there's also a desire to see redevelopment around within our revitalization centers around these new bus rapid transit stations. So we're hoping to accomplish both.
Thank you, Eric. And I would like to remind everyone that we're taking one question per attendee. And then when we make it through the list of questions, we will return to the top and go through again. And if we don't get to questions tonight, we will be answering them directly to individuals who asked the question. So I just wanted to make sure that, that you knew that that was our process. Our next question. Jefferson Manor is concerned with the 4-foot sidewalk design width along North Kings Highway between PennDOT and the Metro. This is too narrow for all the expected foot traffic from Alexandria South and Shelby. On trash day, one has to step onto the street currently.
Yeah, we may be able to. There's, I know, some along North Kings, there are some grass strips. They're not very wide, maybe 1 foot or so. We were looking to maybe rebuild the sidewalk and fill those in. The right of way is very constrained on North Kings. We are not recommending any acquisition of property along North Kings. The front yards are very shallow, and people have fences right up to the back of the sidewalk in many areas. If we had to widen the sidewalk to something wider, 6 feet or even beyond that, we would need to buy right of way from those residential properties. And at the moment, we are not recommending that. So we'll work within the existing right of way to try to fix what's there. But we're not proposing to widen right now into those front yards.
Okay. The next question is, the project is approximately 10 years away. How will change orders be applied based on the needs of the community over time?
Change orders are usually done during the construction phase. If you have an unforeseen condition that comes up and it was somehow not accounted for in the design phase, it happens. That's why we build contingencies into every construction project. But the reason that we're conducting all these public meetings now is so that we can find out what the community is looking for before we get to construction. So in terms of station design and architecture and the general appearance of the project and all of those details that people are interested in and concerned about, details on sound walls, all those things we are hoping to work out so that by the time that, we get to construction, hopefully we don't have unforeseen conditions that come up. Now we are looking at we're now looking at a more of a conventional design bid build approach, and not a design build approach, which means that the county will be continuing the design essentially all the way through the design phase, as opposed to turning that over to a contractor, which gives us a lot more control over the design process. And so, hopefully by the time, again, we get to construction, any of those conditions that have been raised by the community have already been addressed, and those are already taken into consideration in the construction contract itself.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next question is, the Wells Fargo Bank at Sacramento Drive is a historic replica of Mount Vernon. As Sacramento Drive is rerouted to the other side, what efforts will you take to protect this property and minimize encroachment?
Yeah, I'm not sure, Ricky, if we are actually doing a partial take on the Wells Fargo property. I don't recall us actually buying the whole property.
I believe that the Sacramento Drive is actually in the VDOT portion of the project.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So I can't speak to that more specifically. If you're interested in questions
Yeah.
about that area, you have to defer to VDOT.
My recollection was that they were avoiding taking the bank building, but I'd have to look at the VDOT plans to confirm that.
Yeah. I believe that I believe the building's not impacted, but there are impacts to the property which are significant. I think loss of access and such.
Okay, thank you. As the next question, as the Vice President of the Springbank Community Association, we are very concerned about the amount of cut-through traffic this total lack of access to the neighborhood will generate.
Yeah, so that's probably a neighborhood specific question. That's probably something better to reach out to our team. I'm not sure, how the project induces cut-through traffic in the neighborhood. So I'd have to see a map and specifically what streets there's concern around. But we are not. We are certainly not proposing. We're not designing our project in a way that would induce and encourage cut-through traffic. If actually, in many cases, we're cutting off access because we're building raised islands, and it's reducing in many areas, reducing the ability for people to actually cut through neighborhoods and make shortcuts because they have to go up, make U-turns at signalized intersections. So again, I'd have to see the specifics of this neighborhood.
Okay. I'm going back up to the top to begin the second round of questions. Okay. The next question is, are there any plans to address the North Kings, South Kings intersection?
The only intersection that we are addressing is the North Kings Richmond Highway intersection. If you're talking about what's called the bow tie, we are looking at some options in that area to make some improvements at that intersection. And there are some design options that we have proposed for that intersection, if that's the area that you're talking about.
Okay, thank you, Eric. The next question is, why are the Fairfax County Water Authority and Fordson Place Shopping Center not being asked to give even a foot of easement for a right turn lane and sidewalk on the parallel Fordson Road, as you and VDOT are picking on residential properties?
I'm sorry, why is the Fairfax Water Authority not contributing right-of-way?
The question, yes, why are the Fairfax County Water Authority and Fordson Place Shopping Center not being asked to give any easement for a right turn lane and a sidewalk on the parallel Fordson Road, as we're picking on residential properties?
Well, I know that the shopping center there did have to push their building back, and I think there was a reservation that they provided along their frontage, or at least as they had to set things back far enough that if when the county came in to widen the road, that we wouldn't have to acquire the building. But the reason the Water Authority is not being asked to contribute right-of-way is because this is not a Water Authority project. This is a Fairfax County DOT project, and so generally the agency that is essentially leading the effort is the agency that takes the initiative to acquire the right-of-way per the designs that are needed. So we can't just ask a commercial shopping center to give us land. We actually have to compensate them for it. We have to buy it from them. And frankly, we would have to do the same from the water authority. So if we needed property from the water authority, we would actually be acquiring property from them as well. Ricky, I don't know if we have agreements where the water authority dedicates land to the county. I'm not aware of any.
No, typically we would still have to buy those land rights. And just as a reminder, the project has typically maintained the existing center line. So we've been looking to acquire approximately 89 feet of right of way from the center line. That is currently existing. So when they went through the redevelopment process, they set back their property to accommodate that 89 feet. And so the widening that's taking place on the other half is to make up for the other side right-of-way needs.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, what is the time frame to acquire commercial properties? It was once reported February 2022. Would that be the time will be required to move, or is the time frame sooner?
That's more a individual property question, and we would have to know the location of your property, and then it would be more appropriate to set up a telephone call, or perhaps even a meeting, or we could even communicate by email to try to identify where your property is located in the schedule, or at least tentatively located within the existing schedule.
Okay, next question. Will Collard Street residents be able to turn left to drive north on Route 1?
Well, I know we're realigning Collard and Popkin to a new intersection. So if you're coming out of the new realigned intersection, the answer is yes. You would be able to go left, north, or south on Richmond Highway.
Okay. The next question is, has any consideration been given to the amount of traffic that will increase on the already busy Route 1? And how will this be mitigated?
Well, that is in part, large part actually, why VDOT is widening their 3-mile segment of Richmond Highway because of increased demand and traffic flow along Richmond Highway. So they're widening from 4 to 6 lanes. But that's the maximum. We are not proposing to widen the highway beyond that. We're not proposing to widen it to 8 lanes, for example. That's why we're building the BRT system, and hopefully people actually use the BRT system, choose to use it rather than to drive. That's the idea, actually, is to get people out of their cars and to give them a comfortable service and a comfortable system to use instead of having to drive.
Okay, next question. Who are the design consultants?
Well, that's a pretty extensive team. The prime consultants are RK&K and STV. And then we have dozens of sub-consultants working under those 2 firms.
Okay, thank you, Eric. The next question. Seeing the proposal for the Popkins Lane adjustment, does this help mitigate the southern Richmond Highway travel at sunset? Cresting the hill does offer light challenges at the current traffic signal on that corner.
Well, not sure. If you're talking about, sunsets and dusk and the sun's in your face, those problems are probably going to persist, like we have at, many locations throughout the county. I will say that the intersection overall will be an improvement. Right now, the sight distance is restricted at the intersection, and there's a lack of storage for turning vehicles. So the intersection will be opened up and widened, and of course realigned, so the visibility will be improved and enhanced. But again, if they're concerned about dusk and sunset, sun in your face, I'm not sure that that there's anything in our design that would fix that problem.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Here's another question regarding St. Louis Church, which you might have answered in part, but I'll read the question. Previous maps showed historic buildings on the property of St. Louis Church as impacted. However, BRT map 4 now appears to show them as intact. Can you confirm that the demolition plan has been adjusted to preserve the St. Louis properties?
Well, that's always been our intention, and we've communicated that to the parishioners and the church, that we did not intend to move or relocate Parish Hall, which is located near the corner. So that, I think, was the primary structure of concern on the property. And again, our plan at this point is to not move or relocate or disturb that structure.
Okay, I was just scrolling down our list of questions. It appears that the Collard Street area of disturbance has been shortened to just the existing hill. Can those of us further up the hill who were initially in an area of disturbance feel comfortable with the new mapping?
Well, I would encourage you to make an appointment to go through the maps if you're concerned about your specific property. It's a lot easier to walk through with you individually where the limits of disturbance are and things of that nature. Now, keep in mind that we are refining our design. We are not at 100%. We are approaching 30% design. So we are refining, but there's still room for adjustment. And so if you have concerns about your individual property, I would encourage you to reach out to our team members and walk through with them, one of them, the specific concerns you have on your property.
It looks like we might have made it through our questions. If anyone on the phone has a question, if you would press *3 to raise your hand, and then I could unmute you if you wish to ask a question by phone. And then if anyone else has any questions, please feel free to continue. We have a few minutes left in our meeting, so we'd be happy to take some additional questions. And I would like to remind everyone that on the website you can find a lot of information about the project, as well as the roll maps in the materials section of the website, where you can learn a little bit more about right-of-way, and all the materials are there. So please go to our website, and if you'd like to make comments about the project, you can also leave comments through the website. So. Okay, our next question: how to get info on the southern portion of the project? Are there maps that show property parcels?
I presume that's going to be VDOT's portion. Ricky, you may have a contact that we can post for people to direct their questions to VDOT.
Yes, for now, we'd be happy to coordinate those efforts. So if you would like to email us about a specific property that's in the VDOT segment, we can certainly forward your email to the appropriate personnel at VDOT to answer those questions.
Okay, another question. How to get info on the southern portion of the project? Are there maps to show the property parcels? Actually, I already said that one. I'm sorry. The next question, is Richmond Highway south of Napa Road completely the responsibility of VDOT rather than FCDOT? Will the station design and branding meetings not apply to that area?
Well, it's both actually. VDOT is responsible for the widening of the roadway, but the county is responsible for constructing the BRT system, including the construction of the stations and the platforms. So any design details related to the BRT system for the entire system, all the way down to Fort Belvoir, those would come through the county. So again, just if you have property specific questions on VDOT's portion because your property, for example, is being impacted by their design or their right-of-way acquisition, those, we're going to have to, get you in touch with somebody from VDOT. But if you have questions about the BRT system, those can be directed to us.
And just to follow up on, I'm sorry, the stormwater management ponds also, were they on this project or on VDOT?
Well, VDOT has a number of stormwater management ponds on their segment, and then of course, in the northern segment, Napa Road North, we also have a number of stormwater facilities as well. So it's a combination of both VDOT and Fairfax County.
Okay, thank you, Eric. I think that takes us to the end of our questions, but we can wait here just a couple of more minutes in case somebody has a last minute question, or also if anybody who called in would like to ask a question, we're also standing by here. And while we're waiting, once again, you can go to our project website, which has a lot of information that you can learn about the whole project. You can learn about, you can view materials, the roll maps, and spend some time with that. And you can either go to fairfaxcounty.gov/transportation and then search for Richmond Highway BRT. And that will get you directly to our website. You can find the information there. So we hope that you will visit there, as well as if you have comments or you want to set up one of the individual property meetings, as Ricky mentioned, please email dotbrt@fairfaxcounty.gov and include right-of-way or ROW in the subject line, so people will know where to send it to Ricky to schedule that. You can also mail comments or questions to Fairfax County Department of Transportation, Richmond Highway BRT, to the project manager at 4050 Legato Road, Fairfax, Virginia, 22033. So with that, I think that we are ready to wrap up the meeting. As a reminder, this meeting has been recorded and it will be posted on our website in the next couple of days. So if you wanted to watch it again, we'd love to have you watch it again. And also for questions that we didn't get to, which I think we did cover the questions, but we will respond to you individually with answers to your questions. So we just appreciate your attendance so much, and we do have those upcoming meetings in November on station design. So we invite you to attend that meeting as well. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you next time.